shit. We lost the intro. Let me try that again.
That was quick.
See, that's what I get for dialing things in. Let's do that one more time because I like it. I added you to the intro. And I know, right? Ready? Let's do it again.
Yeah.
See, there we go.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Yeah, were you able to hear it?
Yeah, absolutely, man.
Very cool, very cool. Hey, everybody. Welcome to a special episode of Skeptic Generation. Today is March 3rd, 2024. I am Eric Murphy. This is Skeptic Generation, and we need to talk. Joining me today is Secular Rarity. Do you still go by SR online?
Oh, yeah, you can also call me Elliot. Both are acceptable.
Okay. I didn't want to dox you, but yes. Okay, cool.
Yeah. No. It's already out there already. So there's probably some inappropriate pictures of me too, but we won't talk about that. That's for another time.
Oh, dude, it is so good having you on. I can't believe that, it feels like we've been ships passing in the night. You've been so good as just a volunteer for SKEPGEN, and also becoming a host in a whole bunch of other shows, and becoming kind of a in front of camera personality yourself. And we've never actually done a show before. So
I know it's so odd because we have interacted so much, over the last couple of years, and we've both been in this space, in various capacities. And I've watched you for years, right? I've listened to you and V for so long, and loved so much of your stuff. And it was I was thrilled, man. This whole last week, I was just super excited and giddy. And it was odd because not a lot of the people that I interact with on a daily basis, like at my work, know about this. And it's not that I'm private or anything, it's just that it just doesn't come up in conversation, you know? So they'd be like, hey man, do you got anything fun on the schedule? And I'm like, yeah, actually something this weekend is really cool, but it didn't register with them. It was something that just they didn't understand. But I'm excited, man.
I totally get it. I've definitely been in places where at work people hear that I've got some kind of podcast YouTube thing, and they go, oh, that's cute, that's nice. Have fun with that. And then you're interacting in the community itself. People are like, oh my gosh, it's you. And it's such a weird niche space.
Yes.
I totally get it. Before we talk about anything else, though, I do want to put out the phone number. That way we can get calls today. So here is the number, 412-SKEPGEN. That's 412-753-7436. Or you can go to tiny.cc/SKEPGEN to call online. Either way, it is free for callers, and we'd love to talk to people. So if you want to talk about what you believe and why, if you have a niche philosophical topic, or if you just want to talk to us, we would very, very much want to talk to you. So again, one more time, because can't do it enough. 412-SKEPGEN. That's 412-753-7436 or tiny.cc/SKEPGEN. And while we get that, I see that we have somebody calling in, but we're happy to take more callers. So today's the day. SR, how have you been?
Pretty good, man. Pretty good. So one of the really cool things that I've been lucky enough to do in the time that I've been in this space is I get to participate in a lot of in-person conversations as well. So a group of local atheists here in the Middle Tennessee area, and a group of Christians, we got together, middle of last year, and we decided that we wanted to have these, difficult and nuanced conversations in public, in a really cordial, way, in a way where we're actually engaging with each other and trying to learn from each other. And so we just put on our February event a couple of days ago, had a great crowd. It was a really, really fun time. And I think one of the coolest things about this has been, when the 7 or 8 of us got together initially, only a couple of us were really friends. Only a couple of us really knew each other. And now we're at this point where even though we know for a fact how hardcore we disagree on some really important topics, we are absolutely friends, and we hang out outside of the events, and we want to know about each other's lives, and we like tease each other. And one of the guys the Christians totally believes in Noah's flood. Some of us atheists, we're total, depravity, loving, whatever, and we play with each other on that. We have fun, and we grow as people. It's truly, truly awesome, man. So the online space is great, and I love it, and there's so much you can do. But being face to face with people and cordially, respectfully disagreeing is an amazing experience. So I'm great. I love that that's going on. So
that's really, really cool. It's a lot harder to scream at somebody and you can't hang up on them in person. And there was something in Texas that was called the Bible and Beer Consortium, where a whole bunch of atheists and believers would get together, and at least once a month they would have that kind of event, and it was not happening anymore when I was in Texas. So I was really, really sad to not have that. But the fact that you're creating that, and we have to keep that kind of stuff going. And I love hearing that the kind of spirit of that is happening somewhere. So that is really, really cool. I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
So let's see here. I think we should probably take our first call. What do you think?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's talk to some people.
All right. Let me make sure I've got this all dialed in. We're going to start off by talking to Sarah in Washington. Sarah, you're live.
Hi, remember me?
Hey.
I used to be on your dean's list.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Hey, Sarah.
Hey.
How's it going? What did you want to talk about today?
I had a question about religion and the good ideas that some religions have, and if it's okay to adopt ideals taught by religion so long as it aligns with my own morality.
Could you give us an example?
Jesus says, love thy neighbor. Stuff like that. Or the Buddha says, to try and focus in on, your own emotions and stuff, and try to achieve nirvana, if you will, or perhaps wish good karma on people.
Okay. Well, I think that being kind to each other is definitely something that has been co-opted by religion and has been I think a lot of religions have kind of claimed that that's where it comes from, is the religious space. But I think that to give them credit would be to, I don't know. The more important thing to me is that we're being kind to each other. So absolutely, I think you should do that. But I don't think we should be giving them credit. What do you think, Elliot?
Yeah, I've heard this a lot, Sarah. And I mean, first off, I want to say, don't put such restrictions on yourself, and don't be so worried if you find something, some small ideal that exists in Christianity that's hey, that's actually good, because as you kind of already said, you're using a separate system. You're using an outside morality other than just the Bible, to make these determinations as to whether or not these, conclusions or ideas are good, right? Love thy neighbor is a good ideal, not because Jesus said it or because there's some afterlife or whatever. It's because of the demonstration of harm or suffering, or the reduction of that, right? And that's awesome that you see that. So definitely don't be bummed out oh man, this thing's from Hinduism, I don't know if I should take it. It's no, of course, if it's a good ideal. But yeah, I would just totally second what Eric said and say that what I have found more often than not, and maybe every single time. That's a bit of an intense statement, but seriously, it feels like pretty much every time I go looking into a religion for good stuff, that good stuff is actually found outside of the religions, right? And the religion ends up bringing this extra baggage that isn't necessary. Because again, the love thy neighbor thing on its face is great. Yeah, be kind to people. But if you're being kind to people because there's some God that forces you to do it, otherwise he's going to torture you, you see, it's like, oh, that's bad, right? Exactly. That's the baggage that comes with this belief from the religion.
And then I was also kind of curious about Buddhism specifically, because it is like an atheistic religion. The only thing I couldn't get behind is that all emotions are pain. I'm not sure what that means exactly. But things, in attempts to, as I go through my own psychological therapy, as I'm coming out of these things and traumas in life, and I'm finding if I take upon some of these practices like meditation or ways to achieve nirvana, if you will, I don't think that there is going to be a life after this one, that sort of stuff. But I just wonder, about what your take is on that one also, because they don't really have a deity either.
Yeah, I have friends who, for years have participated in various Buddhist themed or, these rituals have the origins in Buddhism of some kind, right? But they aren't expressly talking about anything supernatural or anything, but some of my friends participate in these, Buddhist blessing ceremonies. And I'm using air quotes here because they would tell me, hey man, I don't think anything's happening to this food. Like, I don't think anything magical is going into it or anything about the food is changing or anything. But what it does is it gives me a few seconds right before I eat my meal to just be conscious of where I am and how I got here. And it gives you that just deep breath in, deep breath out kind of moment. And like, there's nothing wrong with that stuff. Don't ever feel like, oh my gosh, man, I'm meditating. Does that mean I'm religious? Oh no. Like, no. The rituals oftentimes for me are not the biggest thing that I push back on. The gathering together in community and singing songs and, greeting each other and having a snack. That's great. That's all good stuff, It's when they start adding the unsubstantiated claims on top of it, right, of the supernatural and stuff. Yeah. That's where I really get the problem. And so if you're saying, hey, look, sitting around, focusing on my breath, trying to clear my head for a while, once a day or once a week or whatever, is just really beneficial for me in all these ways. And I don't really think I'm going to be born again as a snake or some, I don't know, eagle or something. I don't know how it works. But if that's where you're coming from, yeah, I don't see any problems with it for sure. It sounds like it's helping you.
Yeah, it definitely does. I just kind of trying to make sense between the scientific and the metaphysical stuff, the hokey stuff, if you will, to be, a bit more blunt. Like, I'm the only person that would go to a rock show because I like the rocks, not because I believe they have any healing powers or anything.
Trust me, Sarah, I'd be right there with you. I have more rocks than I know what to do with. If rocks had powers, I have ingested so much rock dust at this point, I should be Superman.
Is this just like a thing? I had a rock collection growing up. I was the exact same. Is that just like a thing?
I don't know. Rocks are cool, man. Like, I don't know why anybody disagrees with that. They're amazing.
I'm sorry. I
have pyrite and bismuth and all sorts of fun minerals, but do I think it's going to cure cancer? No. Is it something that calms me down when I look at the rainbow colors and the even patterns, and I'm like, that? There's something rooted in science where I think where some of this woo comes from. Oh. There's some intuition behind the humanity of it. They're they create this woo around the science, and they need to get back to the science.
I especially with bismuth, I think it's just so beautifully square, the geometric figures that it makes we're getting way off base. But I no, all good. I do kind of want to push back though, just a little bit, because when you say it's an atheistic religion, do you need to have a god to have a theism? You know, the idea of like deifying. Can you hear me? Hello, Sarah, can you hear me okay?
Oh, now I can hear you now. Yeah.
Okay,
I
good.
couldn't hear the last few seconds of what you said.
No worries. So I was saying the kind of deification of somebody who's achieved nirvana or some state of perfection, I would consider, you know, that and raising them up, you know, as some kind of superhuman would definitely count as a religious standpoint. Also, the view that there is life after death, that there is a world where, you know, you get to come back again, like that whole cycle, I think is a religious viewpoint. And so ontologically, I think that while you may find use in it, I would definitely draw a line there and say, I've found use in this thing, but that doesn't lend any credibility to the supernatural claims, because it still does make supernatural claims. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, it's interesting. I kind of have to put up with that when I go to like guided yoga classes. And people want you to align your chakras or are super, you know, just really, really wooey with your relationship to the earth and you flowing into and out of things. It's just, I don't know. It feels really icky, especially when everyone there is just white as driven snow. Which I'm learning in Portland is just a thing. But
yeah, I've been to Portland once. It's a mess right now. But yeah, anyway, so you're talking about like the chakras and dissolving into the earth. When I go through that in like those kinds of things, my ADHD brain goes, okay, let's imagine we actually are for a second, and then it shuts off. I'm like, thank you for shutting off for a minute.
Well, and I mean, it's fun to pretend, but the thing is, they're not pretending. You know?
Yeah.
It's so weird.
And because there is so much of that mix, right? Because there is so much of that overlap, a lot of places where this Venn diagram looks a hell of a lot more like a circle. That's why oftentimes you'll find me kind of staying away from some of those things and just really trying to go a route of a more secular concept for it. Again, like, you know, sitting around, taking stock of your breath and you know, where you are in the moment and stuff. That is 100% secular. You don't need any religious mumbo jumbo whatsoever, right? You can totally just do that, just being a person. No problem there. I love it. When we start going into the chakras and the past life regression things and all that, it's like, oh man, this is not only is this not well founded, right, but it actually has a much greater potential of causing harm to people. And so that's why I get really wary of it, because again, the meditation itself, not really going to be the thing that leads to the harm. What's going to lead to the harm are these ideals that make people you know, think things are real when we don't have good reason to, or just, you know, helps them develop an epistemology that isn't sound, right? Because we know the more that we accept conclusions for bad reasons, the more likely we are to do that in other scenarios too. And so if it was my perfect world, we'd just get rid of all of those bad methodologies and just focus on the stuff that is demonstrable, you know, which again, meditation is. We do have good evidence to support the fact that meditating can be really beneficial for people. At just, you know, keep all the woo woo out of it.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah. Sarah, it's really good to hear from you. I know it's been a really long time. But yeah, being here after a year off and then getting kind of my feet under me, I'm just blown away by the amount of kindness and support that has come this way. So thank you for sticking around, and thank you for coming back.
Yeah, and maybe I can't come back on the dean's list anymore, but I'm still coming back in patron in some form. So just want to say congratulations on coming back. You made it. And congratulations on moving to Left Coast, Best Coast. Also,
East Coast, Beast Coast, baby. Calm down now.
Okay, well, I'm from East Coast. I understand.
I'm just joking with you. I don't care.
Like, I'm from West Virginia, and I'm probably the only
nice
atheist leftist to come out of West Virginia. But
nice.
So yeah, really glad that you guys are on this journey here, and V, and everybody's doing good. So maybe come up to Seattle sometime. Hang out.
Absolutely.
Seattle Atheist Church, come up and see us, or whatever. But just wanted to say thank you so much for continuing this on. You guys are Eric, I have followed you since literally the beginning of your going on live. I'm not kidding.
I'm so sorry.
You guys have been a really positive example of what it means to be, an atheist talking to theists instead of foaming at the mouth militant stuff, which is slightly entertaining, but it gets a little tiresome after a while, and it ultimately goes nowhere. So I really want to see good things come from this show because I believe in you guys.
Well, thank you so much. That means the world to me, and I'm really glad. I'm really glad that we can get the ball rolling on modeling, the kind of conversations that we want to see, and I am happy to see it happening in other places. Because I see Elliot doing it in other shows, and it's just it feels good. Let's keep that rolling. Thank you for calling in.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, take care.
You too.
See ya.
Bye.
Yeah, I definitely have used you and Ethan Michael and folks like y'all just to help guide the way that I have these difficult conversations, because I do believe that compassion in these tough conversations is what actually makes progress, what actually gets people on the other side to stop seeing you as an outsider, as an other, and instead see you as a human being. And once you really establish that, it's amazing how some of the most hot button, difficult conversations can be some of the most productive and learned conversations you have. So it's my favorite way to do it. So
I'm glad, and not to mention the way. Also, what you were saying before is just unlikely friendships. People you find that you are calling to say happy birthday on their birthday to them, and you never would have imagined you would have done that with somebody. So I'm really, really happy to see it. I saw in the comments before we get into the next caller, somebody had asked if you had defected from ACA shows, as if it's verboten to talk about it.
Sure.
I'm really, really happy that you're representing these conversations in this way on those shows, man. And I'm sad that I wasn't on Talk Heathen to welcome you on, but you definitely for whatever it's worth, if it's worth anything at all, you have my blessing, and,
thank you.
And I'm glad that you're doing it, and I'm glad that I think that the idea that one person can own an approach, if somebody it might be my face, it might be my voice, find those people that resonate with you, and the fact that you're also bringing that to the table is just fantastic. And plus you have a really sweet sense of humor, and there's a lot to you that is just not in me that I absolutely adore seeing. So I'm glad you're here, man. Yeah,
I really do appreciate that. And I have had this view for a while, which is just I really believe there is so much space out there for so many people right now. We have such an intense fight on our side, as non-believers, as skeptics, as secular-minded folks, science-minded folks, and so with that, I am just thrilled to see more and more super awesome people inhabiting this space. And again, we are seeing a lot more of that compassionate conversation. And I definitely think you were a big part of that, man. I think you helped push a lot of people into seeing that you can have this conversation in a different way.
Yeah.
And it just means that I just keep meeting these really, really cool people. I met this guy the other day. I'm just going to shout him out real quick. Durante Lamar. He was a megachurch pastor for years. He's now an atheist. He has a super cool story, and he's just this super nice guy. And like, I'm just thrilled because even 3 years ago, when I first started helping out places and whatever, there wasn't as many people, and that number keeps growing. I mean, we are taking over the world here. Us atheists are gonna be running the show here shortly. Like, get on board. We are coming.
I hope so. I hope so. And it's not even so much we are coming. It's we're bringing it our side. We're
right.
for good reasons. We're and through good conversations. And no, I'm right there with you. All right, are you ready to hop onto the next call? Oh, before we do, one last thing, because I do want to get some other callers before we take this. 412 SKEPGEN. That's 412-753-7436 or tiny.cc/SKEPGEN. If you use that link, tiny.cc/SKEPGEN, it usually is a nicer link. Or it's a cleaner audio feed as well, and it's free. So if you want to talk to us, that's how you do it. Let's move on and talk to Nick in Utah. Nick.
Hey guys, how's it going?
Hey, doing well. I'm waiting for the caffeine to kick in, and just happy to be here with a guest and getting other, just that back and forth is just so nice. How about you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for asking. I just wanted to call. I had actually called before your hiatus with basically the same topic, but I'm not sure that I presented it well. Basically, I frequently find with any public figure that sometimes they're just going to have views that you disagree with. Sometimes that means you support them. Sometimes that means that you stop. Specifically, I am a huge fan of the author Brandon Sanderson.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's pretty great. At least I think so. But and he does tend to have pretty liberal or progressive views on things like LGBTQ rights and stuff like that. But he is also still a devout tithe-paying Mormon.
Isn't he a professor at Brigham Young University?
Yeah, he does teach one class a year at BYU. And that's, a whole other controversy in and of itself. But, although Brandon himself has, like I said, these progressive views, he does pay 10% of his substantial income to an organization that does not support those views. Yeah. And that actively campaign against them in cases like Prop 8 in, California, where the church was doing like call centers and stuff to, prevent the legalization of gay marriage. So I find myself in this weird place where I'm not quite sure what I should think about it. Because, as an ex-Mormon, I do have a perspective of that tithing is requisite in the Mormon church. It's like they're holding your salvation hostage if you don't
if you're
pay
not
tithing.
Yeah, if you're not in good standing, you can't get married in the church.
In the temple, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I was just kind of curious about your guys' perspective on that kind of situation, just because both of you have given me quite a bit of insight before in your different call shows and stuff. So I was just interested to hear what you guys thought about that.
Sure. Elliot,
Yeah.
what do you think?
I don't think you will ever find a perfect other individual to represent your views, right? And that sucks a little. There's never going to be a person running for office. There's never going to be a friend or a colleague or a family member that you literally see eye to eye on absolutely everything. And this is why when it comes to the conversation with religious folks who want this super hardcore, strict, absolute, always the case principle of morality, I push back. This is why I don't think that the best way to live your life when it comes to determining what's good and bad is just these bullet points that have to be followed constantly because of this exact situation that you find yourself in. There's this dude out there who like writes all this really good stuff, and 9 out of 10 times is just freaking crushing it. Great arguments, super duper compassionate, really on the right side of history, all of that. But in this one area, yeah, there's actually something that's not so great. Now, is this guy going out there and, you know, slaughtering puppies? No, it doesn't seem like that's what he's doing, right? So the behavior that he's engaging in, while it's something that you disagree with, and while it's even something that, you know, may demonstrably lead to harm, right? This is where the pragmatism comes in. This is where we as individuals who say, what matters to me is well-being, both on an individualistic level and a societal level. And when we look at that, when we look at that picture, unfortunately, we just got to do the math sometimes. And if the math works out where, hey, yeah, there's this Mormon, and it's not really great that the whole Mormonism thing, that's not, yeah, I really wish that wasn't the case. But look at all this other incredible stuff that this person does. Yeah. That's just a straight scale right there for me, Nick. And again, that means that it's not always going to work out perfectly, you know, but that's okay, because I don't think there is a system where it does work out perfectly. And if you've got one, please call me. I love to talk about morality. So like, let us know what that perfect system is. But yeah, I think it's okay to support somebody like that, man.
Yeah, sure. That makes sense. Sorry, Eric, were you going to say something?
Oh yeah, I was just going to add in. It's an interesting kind of thought, because it's a guilt by association and whether or not somebody should be canceled type of thing. And how do we decide whether or not somebody's done something so awful that it bothers us when we consume their material? Yep. You know, when you bring up the fact that the Mormon Church has done really awful things, and, you know, yeah, sure. And I will not ever support the Mormon Church. But I also don't support the Catholic Church, and there are plenty of content creators and things like that who are Catholic, and I still consume their stuff. You know, I don't support Chick-fil-A, but I'm not going to refuse to talk to somebody who does eat at Chick-fil-A. I'm just going to disagree with that choice, right? I love the Cosmere. I saw a TikTok the other day of somebody who said, who was just, you know, it was a skit. They're talking to a friend, and, you know, hey, how are you doing? Oh, I've just been catching up on Brandon Sanderson. And it just gets quiet.
Yeah,
the dramatic music.
Saw that. Yeah.
The dramatic music comes in. You've been what? I haven't seen my family in months. You know, it's just so much to it, and I haven't really seen awfully problematic shit. And because of that, like, I don't think that we should be canceling somebody because they subscribe to something, and that thing itself is the problem. You know, it's this guilt by association by degrees and canceling, and I don't think that we should. Yeah, because then we lose the opportunity to gain that person later, you know? And so as somebody who absolutely loves Brandon Sanderson books, I could not imagine canceling him. And I don't think that, just like Elliot said, not only is it totally understandable because we can't have everything in common with somebody else, I don't see any bad in it. I really don't. So as far as that's concerned, have fun with it. You know, if the day comes that Brandon Sanderson says some really problematic shit, that's the day I'll probably put his books down and stop. But until
then,
yeah. But until then,
go
ahead.
Oh no, please finish your thought.
Oh no, what's up?
Well, or if it comes out that he's engaging in certain egregious behaviors, right? Like if we find out that the class that he's teaching at BYU is actually focused on like conversion torture, right? And it's trying to tell gay people that they're not actually attracted to the people that they're attracted to and stuff. Well, yeah. Well, then it's like, dude's causing harm. Like, fuck yeah. At that point, yeah, hell yeah. I want to hear you calling in, going like, oh man, fuck Brandon, you know, like totally, man. I'm with it. But yeah, if that's not the case, then yeah, I mean, I think it's okay.
And that is how I justify having been an early Kickstarter of so many of Brandon's projects. So like you better believe I've got like the early edition copy of when he released Mistborn as a tabletop RPG. And the board game with a special sleeve and figures and all of that. Oh, come on.
Don't even get me started on all that.
But Nick, thank you for calling in and thank you for following for so long. We appreciate it.
Thanks, man.
Take care. That was nice.
Yeah. And it is tough to figure out what the right thing to do is a lot of times because of this difficult calculation. And that's why this like simple utilitarianism doesn't work. It has to be more nuanced. It has to take into account so many different factors of life and what a person is. Yes, I'm an atheist, but that is not the only freaking thing about me, right? I am a huge rock hound. That's the term for those of us that really love rocks. And we go digging for rocks and stuff. I literally have rock digging tools just in the other room. But like, yeah, there is so much to every single person and every single viewpoint. And to just say, oh man, yeah, but like this guy's still a Mormon, you know, or like, man, this guy's great, but like they do believe in chakras. It's like, well, yeah, okay, and that's wrong, and I agree, that's not right, but they're also down at the local soup kitchen literally every weekend. They're actively on the front lines supporting trans rights and the right to vote and freedom of speech. It's like, I don't know, man. You believe in your fucking chakras, like.
Yeah, or just, you know, so from what I've seen of Brandon Sanderson stuff in particular, it's just, I haven't seen him necessarily at soup kitchens. He might be, but he's just also like not doing bad stuff. It's just he's just writing like a madman, and yeah. So I don't know. I don't know if ever in my lifetime I'm going to fully catch up. I stopped a couple of years ago, and I've seen that like a dozen books have come out since then, and I don't even know where to start. But all right, are you ready to move on to the next call?
Oh yeah.
All right, let's do it. We have Red in Texas. Red is absolutely a name that I remember. You're live on the show. How's it going?
Hi, how you guys doing?
Doing good. Thank you for calling in. It has been a long time.
It has. I wanted to call in last week, but I had to deal with some life stuff, unfortunately. But I'm here this week.
Totally understood.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, glad you made it. What did you want to talk about?
So, kind of going off of the last discussion I had with you about paganism, I went to the community that you mentioned before. It's a really great pagan community. They're really accepting of all kinds of people, including Atheopagan. But through the weeks I've been there, I've kind of been thinking like we kind of give the gods their own power, basically, because us as human, we created the gods, basically, inventing them, and we give them perceived power over us that they let influence our lives. So I kind of wanted to discuss a little bit about that.
Okay. I am interested in finding out more about what you think of it, because using that language can be weird. And so, like, before I make assumptions, talk to me. What are your thoughts on it?
I'm still kind of form out completely my thoughts on it because I'm still like going through the Atheopagan stuff. With my experiences, I think it's been really helpful having, because when I do the little pagan prayers, I write them down. It kind of feels like I'm writing to a friend when I do these prayers, and they're really, really just simple, casual conversations, basically to myself, but I'm writing it to as if I'm writing to another person, to a god, basically saying, hey, I'm having this trouble. I wish I had help with this. And I guess that makes me think I'm kind of having a conversation with like a perceived, like an imaginary friend almost, is how I see the Nordic gods. I don't know if they're actually there, and I don't have a reason to believe they're there, but it's extremely helpful to have somebody to have a perceived conversation with when I'm writing these things down, kind of like a journal. And I was thinking, like, I'm kind of giving them power over, kind of in an influenced way over my life, because, like, I feel like I'm talking to a friend, even though I'm not getting an answer back. I was thinking how, in the same vein, other religions have this, like Christianity. They give God perceived power that they think that they're going to send them to hell, and they let that influence over their lives. And I was kind of thinking about that all across their religions, kind of. Sorry, I'm a little over the place. I'm trying to collect my thoughts as I think here.
No, that's okay. I'm getting my thoughts together as you're talking. So, like,
yeah. If I could just ask real quick, Red, it almost sounds like you're saying to me, and please, like, correct me if I'm way off base here. It almost sounds like you're kind of questioning, like, hey, is this practice that I've been engaged in, am I maybe taking it too far? Like, am I maybe verging on the edge of it not being okay anymore? Is that kind of what you're going for?
Kind of not. I think it's healthy for me to be able to write out my thoughts and stuff.
Yeah.
To have it write out to what I kind of like what I said before. I kind of perceive these gods as being like kind of like imaginary friends that I talk to. And I've been having thoughts like, do I really get to call myself an atheist, or do I get to call myself a pagan? Sorry. Or am I fence sitting here? But I really
I definitely don't think you need to worry so much about the label, right? Like, if you feel comfortable with the label Atheopagan, and you feel like when somebody asks you, hey, Red, you know, what are you? What do you believe? And you go, well, I'm an Atheopagan. And they go, well, gosh, I just don't know what the heck that is. If you feel comfortable in terms of being able to describe that to people, right? Not even defend it, because that's silly. You don't need to defend, you don't need to defend who you are or what you think, right? To anybody, right? But if you feel comfortable with that term, and you feel comfortable being able to explain to people what that means and at least a basic concept, I say take the label. Hell yeah. Like, I love the label theological non-cognitivist, but I don't always say that right away to people, because it involves a bit of unpacking there as to what the heck I mean, right? But, like, I also don't feel bad with taking the label atheist, because I kind of am both. They are kind of similar, If somebody wants to say, hey, you're not actually an atheist, man, you're an agnostic, it's like, I don't care, whatever, you call me whatever you want, man. Do we understand at least my position, right? And so, if you want to take the label atheist and somebody says, hey, what does that mean to you? And you go, well, I don't really believe any of the big gods, like the Shiva and the Allah thing. I don't think those are real, but I'm not super positive on maybe some of these others, I do these rituals and yada, yada, and they really help me and so forth. Fuck yeah, you're an atheist. Like, you don't have to fight harder for it. Like, absolutely. You take that label that makes you feel comfortable.
Yes,
Okay.
I don't know. I don't know how much I want to, how much I can add to that. Like, just like addressing the example that you gave, being able to externalize your issues so that you can see it from an outside point of view can be an incredibly useful tool. When you talk about giving power to a thing, you know, there's a lot of language in there that makes me bring back my Christian, you know, background. And so, you know, are you giving it authority in your life, you know, and that kind of stuff.
That's what I was feeling like too.
Yeah.
That's why I was kind of like, I'm giving power to these things that may or may not be there. It kind of feels Christianity, but this writing these things down really helped me to have like a perceived being listening to me as I write to them.
I honestly think that that's part of the indoctrination, still talking. You know, and that's something that you have just the same way that Elliot said, you don't owe it anything, and there's nothing that is what went on in my head. What I remembered as a pastor who would say that there are principalities in the world. You know, there are realms that belong to certain, you know, good and evil figures, and are you giving power to those principalities? And whether or not I believed it, it is definitely a style of thinking that I took with me, that I learned that I have to let go of. And you are not giving power to principalities. You are not, you know, you are not boosting the actual like spiritual magic of some being. You are finding a culture that you're engaging with, that you're enjoying. And you are, you know, finding useful tools, and however you want to frame that for yourself. It sounds like you you have a good head on your shoulders. You are able to recognize the difference between reality and fiction, and you have been working on your epistemic grounding such that if something does come along and make you feel weird, you address it. You don't just suppress it. And that is a huge piece of indoctrination that it sounds like you've absolutely kicked ass in finding your way out of that. And just keep that, you know, be proud of that tool as well. And just moving forward, you know, listen to your gut. If something feels weird, explore it. Don't repress it, and apply that framework, those epistemic tools that you've worked so hard to build as you go along. And then where you go from there, what brings you joy. That kind of feels like the theme of the episode, right? Between this and the last caller, is if it brings you joy, go for it. Like we're not going to gatekeep you. There are enough people that are going to be gatekeeping everywhere else.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I've had the unfortunate experience with gatekeepers before. Thank you. This really kind of helps me collect my thoughts a little bit on it. I do absolutely agree with you on the indoctrination part. I'm still trying to kick a lot of indoctrination out from when I was a kid in Church of Christ stuff growing up, and that I've been learning, trying not to suppress it as much. So I've been working through it with a therapist, and she encouraged me that if this Atheopagan stuff is helping me, I should absolutely be exploring it.
Yeah.
Good. And I liked that both you and Eric brought some of this Christianese in, because I do think that is definitely some of it that's playing on you. Like I know with a lot of my Christian friends, you know, they talk to me about worshiping science, or, you know, giving authority to, you know, all these other things in my life, you know, and whatever. And it's just interesting, because truly that's just not at all the way that I see that stuff, right? And it because of the way that they view the world when it comes to how they should behave with God, how they should think about God, how God interacts in their life and so forth. It is so all-encompassing in such a way that they really have trouble seeing it on the outside, where somebody's like, oh, no, man, I don't like worship, the Renaissance Festival. I just really enjoy going. It's just a fun time. And they're like, well, you're giving authority to the Renaissance Festival in your life, and that's the guiding. It's like, no, it's not. I just enjoy hanging out on the weekends, man. Like, I don't give it that much, power over my life. But for a lot of the religious people, that's the only way they can see it, because again, that's the way they were trained to see stuff, because that's what God supposedly is, right? So yeah, we're all working through the years and years worth of getting pounded into our heads all this nonsense, and absolutely don't worry if it takes long time. So
I have to wonder how much of it is satanic panic.
Oh yeah, well, it's that festered in, and it got its way into the weirdest little nooks and crannies of our psychology as a society. And now, yeah, absolutely, every so often I just hear somebody talk about blah blah evil and the devil and whatever, and it's like, man, I just don't think these things are real entities. I just think they're descriptions. Good and evil is a label we place on something. It's not like evil just is some magical force existing in the world, but some people disagree with me on that. So, whatever.
I
Call
also
us.
think good and evil is, people think black and white with that. I think there's a lot of gray areas, but that's a totally different conversation that might be a topic of another day I might call in about.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mostly see like the Norse gods, like I said, imaginary friends, or like some of them are gods of things like Finir. He is the god of I wouldn't say like revenge, but like in war, he broke his chains, and to me that means something to me symbolically. So I take the gods that I connect with symbolically, and I just kind of like pretend to have conversations with them. Even if I think they're not there or not. If they are there, then cool. If they're not, then it's still benefiting me.
Yeah, and
True.
I would love to pick the brain of like a true believing pagan and see kind of what their take on it is. But from where I'm sitting, you're kicking ass.
Yeah.
And please,
I try to.
please do call in about the good versus evil thing, because man, what a conversation that is. It is a lot of fun.
I might have to like write something out for that, because man, I have ADHD and I can't stay on one topic for long.
No worries. I is everyone in this call? Do we all have ADHD? Elliot, do you?
I don't. No? I do not have I've never been diagnosed with ADHD. I just think I have an inability to just
I've never been diagnosed, but I'm pretty sure I have it.
I took my five.
But I've been screened many times for it, and I came up saying high positive for it.
It has definitely helped me for sure. But Red, thank you for calling in. I look forward to the next time we talk.
Yeah, I love these conversations with you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Bye.
Have a good day.
You too.
So just real quick, because I thought this was a thing, and I wanted to find it, so I double checked and looked it up, just because at the end there, Red was talking about different gods and like their control and like what they do, and that has always been one of my favorite things about religions, where it's like, we have a god that just takes care of the goats, or we've got a saint that only cares about oak trees, So my favorite of all the saints ever is Saint Bibiana, because Saint Bibiana is the patron saint of headaches and hangovers. So next time you wake up in the morning, folks, and you're feeling a little sluggish, give a quick shout out to Saint Bibiana.
Oh, that's funny.
Apparently there's a Catholic saint that takes care of your hangovers, guys.
I can dig that.
Yeah. Totally seems legit. This religion totally seems legit.
One book that, it's funny thinking about it, it sprung to mind with this call. Have you read Small Gods by Terry Pratchett? No? Have you read anything by Terry Pratchett?
I know who Terry Pratchett is. I've definitely heard some stuff, but never read a full book.
You absolutely should. Discworld is an incredible universe to get into, and Small Gods has to do with gods who their believers and their faith congregations, under them have kind of gone away, and so they've lost their power, and they're much smaller and less influential. And it's funny. I feel like it looks at that exact viewpoint in a very silly way and kind of contextualize it in a way that you can go, oh, that's fiction, right?
Yeah. That's cool. I like that concept. Yeah, just if all the believers in Yahweh stopped believing, it's like Santa and the Tooth Fairy. If we all stop believing in Santa and the Tooth Fairy, they go away.
Now you need to read Terry Pratchett, because there's a trilogy that follows Death, and the third one is called The Hogfather, and it absolutely talks about Santa. And yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Okay, so we have another caller who has an interesting topic, but it sounds, in the notes, it says that their audio isn't great. So let's see if we can talk to them. Jesse in Washington.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi, friends.
Hi. Oh, it sounds like you're coming in a little loud. Oh.
Okay. How am I sounding? Testing 1 2.
Sounds good. Yeah, it sounded like there was maybe a speaker that was playing the show that was getting picked up by the phone. There was some feedback, but it sounds like the feedback is gone.
Yeah. How are you guys today?
We're so good. What did you want to talk about?
Just quickly, I wanted to say I'm glad to be on the line with you guys. You're two of my favorite hosts.
Hey.
I was just watching this Sunday and caught you guys talking about something that was mildly interesting and just had to do with labels. It could be called rather nitpicky.
Okay.
It's just something I hear from a lot of internet atheists who I often agree with about a lot of stuff, but then it just seems nitpicky when you're talking about this and that label. It's not that important. I'm a secular non-cognitivist. I believe you said they're secular.
Theological non-cognitivist.
Yeah, it's a big word.
It's just basically it just came down to it's one of these labels you can tell somebody I'm a this or that, and they still have no clue what you are or what you think about this or that. And it's just, I don't know, it doesn't move the conversation any. This is just a friendly criticism, you guys. I love you.
No worries.
Yeah.
So can I try and sum the statement up back to you?
Well, sure.
It sounds like you have a bit of a bone to pick when people use labels that don't necessarily help explain what they are.
Yeah.
I would agree, to be honest. I don't think and I think if you go back and listen to what one of the things I said, I was really focusing on the ability to expand on that term, right? I think that's where the labels actually are valuable. It's not so much that somebody comes out and says, I'm an agnostic theist, right? That doesn't help us. What helps us is here's what those words actually mean. Here's the meat of this sandwich here, right? If I just give you the top bun, it's like, well, that's great, man. That's delicious bread. It's really good brioche or whatever the hell it is, but it's not the whole rest of the sandwich. So yeah, and on that sense, Jesse, I'd agree. If I just walked up to somebody and they were like, hey, I'm a Christian, and I was like, hey, I'm a theological non-cognitivist, that'd be it. And that would suck. That would be stupid. That would be nothing, man. If, however, they come up and they say, hey, I'm a Christian, and I go, what do you mean by that? And they go, well, I'm a follower of Jesus Christ's teachings as presented, in the Gospels, but I don't really focus so much on the Old Testament. It's like, oh, okay, now I have a better understanding, right? Just like if I say, hey, I'm a theological non-cognitivist, and somebody goes, oh God, what does that mean, SR? And I go, well, it kind of is getting at this idea that really when we're talking about these concepts of gods and so forth, nobody seems to have a good enough understanding to make a lot of progress, From there, then it's like, oh, cool, now we can have a conversation. But yeah, you just throw out the label and walk away as if that's a checkmate. Yeah, that's never gonna work, man.
Yeah, it's kind of like that with everything, isn't it? With ask somebody and they're like, I'm a secular atheist or some shit, or a deistic atheist, or different flavors of atheist, or this or that. I'm different flavors of a rather absolute statement. It's just kind of silly to me.
Yeah. So, and I think there are two uses for it. One of them, I think, is what we tell people, which is, we best want to describe ourselves. But the other is, I find myself shying away from using the really, really big language unless someone is trying to flex their brain power. If somebody wants to use the big words and sound like they are more knowledgeable, then I kind of bring that up back to kind of go, calm down. But
and I appreciate that about you, Eric. I always have, buddy.
Oh yeah, the thing.
I've been a fan of yours for years, man.
Hey, thank
all the
you.
way back to the Talkeism days.
Hey,
glad to be online.
Yeah, the thing is, personally, I feel like if you know the topic well enough, you don't need to hide behind big language. Whenever I hear stuff by Jordan Peterson, he uses such flowery language that it definitely feels like he's trying to hide in obscurity. And a lot of people who use those kind of big titles are trying to hide in obscurity and try and confuse people into going, oh, I'm maybe just not smart enough to understand it. But if you are using it to either explain yourself to somebody who understands what that is, and you're trying to, get to better labels, fantastic. If you're trying to say, hey, calm the fuck down, I can use big words too, let's just focus on the topic, cool. But yeah,
put the thesaurus away, Jordan. I'm with you on that.
Yeah. But those are all the uses I can think of, other than just. Yeah.
I'm with you. Oh, agnostic atheist. That's what I was trying to remember. That's what I hear all the time since for decades now. Since way back 100 years ago, watching freaking Matt Dillon talk about this or that. Agnostic atheist is just such a nonsense term to me. I'm an up and a down. I'm a black-white.
So that is if you have a very specific definition of agnosticism. When you're using the kind of Dawkins scale, kind of the way that they talk about Gnosticism and agnosticism, it just means whether you know or don't know, or you could be wrong, or all of that stuff. But yeah, that's why it helps to ask them, find out where they are first and then meet them there. But I'm right there with you. It can be
because we can have a conversation where we use two different definitions of a word, right? And still actually make progress in the conversation. We can have the conversation where I say, hey, when I mean atheist, I really just mean it in this broad, very simple understanding of believe in a God, do not believe in a God, right? But then somebody else could say, hey man, I understand that that's the definition you're using in this conversation, but when I use atheist, I mean it as strictly saying gods do not exist. In the philosophical literature, that's pretty much how it's used, and that's okay that that's the case, because Eric and I currently aren't writing a philosophy paper. We're having conversations with human beings, and so we get to go, hey man, we're not going to use that strict definition. We're going to use this definition over here, or vice versa. And again, just as long as we all know where we're coming from, we can actually still have the conversation, because now we just go, when Eric says atheist, this is what he's meaning. So here's how I can push back on this point or whatever. So yeah, I mean, it really is more valuable just to be like, what do you mean by that? Explain it to me like I'm 5, because you know what? I feel like I'm 5 about half the time. So,
but Jesse, if it makes you feel better, I'm going to challenge theological non-cognitive after we end this call.
Oh no! Oh no!
And I'm not trying to tie you guys up all day. I respect your right to have your own personal definitions for all the words. If you respect my right to roll my eyes a little bit, it's okay. I love you guys.
Seriously, being an atheist, and in this community, I feel like rolling your eyes is part and parcel with it. No, you're super good. You're super good. And don't ever think that I don't look back when I'm editing and go, oh God, I look like and sound like a smarmy son of a bitch. Like I do, you know. I'm trying my best to be better, but is what it is.
I know you are, man. You're doing great. I just wanted to compliment you. You've gone so far since the Talk to Even days. Good job, Eric, buddy.
Well,
Give love to V. I say hi to everybody for me. Yeah, be good.
Will do. Take care. Thank you, Jesse.
All right.
Yeah.
Be good.
That was good. That was a good call.
Yeah. V is upstairs right now, sleeping in. And I'm very happy for them.
That's the best. Honestly, they got the best out of this deal between the three of us, right? Like, they're chilling, and here we are. I mean, God.
Hey, you know what? This fills me up in a way that I haven't gotten in a year, and so I'm definitely not taking that for granted. Before we move on to the next caller, though, it feels like Atheopagan weekend. It's amazing. We've got another call, but before we move on, theological non-cognitivist. That sounds
eviscerate me, Eric.
That.
Take my whole worldview apart.
No, that sounds like my definition of agnostic.
Yeah, and I get that, and I don't think. So this is the thing about, I think, both theological non-cognitivism and agnosticism or igtheism. All of those terms inhabit a really similar space, and the differences between them are really, really nuanced. It's really more about like whether or not a belief can actually be formed in the brain on one side of it, and the other side of it is more about the semantics of it, and whether or not we truly have good enough definitions to make any progress. I totally understand when somebody says, hey, that kind of sounds like the way I use agnosticism. And I don't really push back on that, because I think there is a great bit of overlap with all of these terms.
But I'm giving you the floor. I want to know, what's the nuance?
Well, I would say agnostic. So at least for me, when I'm using agnosticism, I really am thinking more in that sense about how we construct knowledge, and like that whole conversation, which isn't perfect either, right? Justified true belief is a it's a good little kind of guidepost, but in and of itself isn't perfect. There's all the Gettier problems, of course. There's so much philosophical literature on this.
I'm right there with you, by the way. JTB is broken. I definitely don't.
It is, but it is kind of a decent way to at least begin your understanding of it, right? And so for me, when I say agnosticism, I'm specifically thinking about it in that sense. Do we have this ability to know? Whereas theological non-cognitivism or agnosticism isn't really talking about whether we have the ability to understand. It's not about whether we can get the knowledge necessarily. It's more talking about the current state of existence, and trying to say more in the sense of, at this point in time, when we use the word God, when we say the term supernatural, because of the fact that it is so ambiguous for so many people, that when we're having these conversations, we're not actually even conceptualizing the same thing at all. And so before we can move forward into this conversation of, is it real? Is it not real? Is there value in following these, dictates and guidelines that this thing created and whatnot? We actually have to nail down a much better understanding. Like when we use the word cup, it doesn't exactly give us this 100% we know everything that is and is not a cup, but we have a much better grasp of cup and wheel and table than we do when it comes to soul or magic. And that ambiguity in soul and magic is so much that we really don't even know what we're talking about. Does that at least make a distinction for you between the way that I'm seeing the terms?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely it does.
Okay.
I just, to put on the hat and challenge it, even though I'm not necessarily...
Yeah, please.
If I were to ask someone you went to high school with to describe Elliot, and I asked your parents to describe Elliot, and asked your neighbors to describe Elliot, the people that they would describe would be very different from each other, even though they're still describing you. And asking them to describe you as a person is a more complex and nuanced thing than describing a cup. you know, or a jacket or whatever. And because of that, I don't know, I feel like when people say, oh, everybody has their own definition of a God, this is true. But if you're all going to the same church, there are enough similarities there that I can get the general idea. And I don't feel bad about addressing those larger brush strokes to completely go, that God doesn't exist. You know what I mean?
Yes, totally. And I agree with you. And there are certain conceptions that absolutely are defined enough, or at least have enough characteristics ascribed to them for this conception of a deity, that I think it is fair to say, the idea that we're super ambiguous on this version isn't really the case, right? Oftentimes, whenever I'm discussing, you know, these particular understandings, as opposed to just saying, you know, atheist, because I am actually a more hard atheist than a lot of individuals, you know, I do take the stance that, like, every God I've ever come across does not exist. I think there's a flaw in some area of it. But oftentimes somebody will say, a religious person in that moment will say, hey, but couldn't there be a version out there that you just haven't come across yet, that doesn't have those problems, you know, that doesn't have the inconsistencies or the lack of evidence? And I say, yeah, you know, maybe it could be the case, but that's where I say I feel that description for that version of a deity, I have no idea what the fuck people are talking about there. And it's like, man, we really got to make some more progress on defining it before we can move forward. But the majority of them, I mean, the Quranic God, the Old Testament God, the New Testament God, BS, all fake, all not real. I feel comfortable with that. I have enough understanding there. It really is something that's this very small sliver of this conversation, I feel like, you know?
Yeah.
Like when somebody just wants to push you as far as they can to say, like, well, couldn't there be something, man? Like a force, like, you know?
Absolutely. I don't know. I think, let me chew on that for a bit.
Yeah.
We might have more of this conversation.
Push back some more, yeah.
Yeah. But I know that we're probably going far afield. Let's go ahead and talk to our next caller. I'm surprised we have another Atheopagan calling in.
Heck yeah.
Yeah, let's talk to Chaz in Arizona. Is it Chaz or Chaz?
Chaz.
Chaz. Welcome to the show. Thank you for calling in.
Well, thank you for having me, number one. Number two, I'm going to mention something that I didn't mention to Bria, and I apologize for that. But, Eric,
what's up?
I owe you a big debt of gratitude. About a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years ago, I reached out to you on Twitter.
Okay.
At a very low point in my life. And you sent me some words back that helped me from doing something stupid. And I really appreciate you for that.
Sure.
That being said,
I'm glad. I'm glad you're here.
Yeah.
I'm glad that you're back on the air. I appreciate you. I've been watching you and V and all the ACA people for years. And then when you left, I felt a little hole. And then I found you again, and then you left again, and then you came back. And I also want to say I appreciate the fact that you have special guests. Because I've never seen Secular Rarity before today, and now I'm going to follow him.
Oh, thanks, man.
Yeah. Because
it's such a sweetheart. Oh my gosh.
Thanks, man.
Agreed. But you guys have a way of talking intelligently about things. Do you know what I mean? I've heard arguments and conversations where it can get a little, what's the word I'm looking for?
Uncharitable?
Yeah, there you go. That's a great word.
Yeah. I was thinking dickish, but yeah, his was better.
Yeah. You said something earlier about sounding swarmy, and yeah, sometimes it gets there, but for the most part, I think you guys talk very intelligently, and very empathetically
Thank you.
to most of your guests. I wanted to comment. The reason why I called is because Red was on, and I saw her, and I was listening, and I really wanted to talk about the idea of Atheopagan. So when somebody pushes me on how I classify myself, I'll always say pagan.
Okay.
Because it saves me from a conversation that I don't really want to have. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, and
Yeah.
Chaz, yes, and I am tuning in because I've put my foot in my mouth when it comes to atheopaganism before. Particularly when I was talking about Ocean Keltoi, and I issued an apology because I said Ocean Keltoi was an atheopagan, and I was wrong. And I don't want to make that mistake again. So I'm very dialed in. Hit me. What do you got?
So for me, when I say Atheopagan, I mean that.
And also just really quickly, because it's getting shouted out in the chat. It sounds like you were saying that Red uses they them pronouns, but other than that, okay, now
okay,
correct.
Sorry about
Okay, yeah, all good. Okay, what do you got?
Thank you. So for me, when I say Atheopagan, what I'm saying is that I see the deities that pagan people tend to worship more as aspects of myself, right? For me, it's Pan. It's always been Pan, always will be Pan. And that's because there's a wildness to him that I identify within myself. There is a aspect of unharnessed sexuality that I kind of identify within myself. So for me, the gods are just more aspects of who I am rather than something out there that I'm reaching for help to. Now, in my rituals, when I'm writing on a piece of parchment and giving it off to the universe to do whatever with, right? I'm basically giving myself permission to let that go. When I'm asking for something or when I'm trying to manifest something, I'm giving myself permission to manifest that within my life. Do I put a name such as Pan or Hecate or Aphrodite, whatever the case might be, on that? Sure. But it's just a label that I'm putting on when addressing an aspect of myself. Do I believe... Okay, so I was raised Roman Catholic.
Okay.
And then thought for sure I was going to be a priest all of my life. And then I realized that my personal sexuality wasn't going to
jive with
with the whole priesthood. So I went more toward a reconciliation type of church.
Okay.
And it was very non-denominational, blah 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 blah. And I even became a pastor for a little while. I was a pastor for 5 years.
Oh wow.
And then my partner got ran over coming home from church by a drunk driver. And that really set me off, right?
Yeah.
Put a big division between me and what I thought was appropriate. Not appropriate. That's not the word I'm looking for. Me and what I thought God was supposed to be, right? Yeah. I mean, literally, Rick, which was my partner's name, was coming home from church after helping some kids. He was a deacon for the church that I was a pastor of. And this happens to him.
Yeah.
And much like in many of the atheist conversations that I hear, we talk about how a good, loving, righteous God can allow pure evil to exist. For instance, children with cancer.
Yeah.
How does that benefit anybody? So that's how I became an atheist to begin with. The idea of the paganism came in when I realized there were aspects of myself that I didn't know how to address. I didn't know how to come to terms with. And by putting a statue, right, outside of me and being able to address that statue, and being able to address that part of me, which I may not be able to confront. And now I'm very comfortable with those aspects of myself, though I still put names on them, Pan and Hecate and so forth. They're still a genuine part of me. I don't see them as outside of myself.
Yeah. I would love.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'd love to jump in here. So there are some people in the chat who are religious and have views that are different. I invite them to call in. When it comes to your specific beliefs, Chaz, I want to ask. I'm imagining someone approaching Christianity the way that, Christianity that I grew up with, and saying, oh, well, I am ascribing this part of myself to the apostle, Paul. Or Paul wasn't an apostle, sorry, Peter or just any of the apostles, and treating them that way. I wouldn't view that person as a Christian, but as somebody who is kind of appropriating the language and characters of the religion that I came from. How does it come across when you're interacting with non-atheist pagans? How do they interact with Atheopagans? And is it more like, do you come across a lot of gatekeeping there, or is it more like the Jewish community who goes, yeah, there are Jewish people who believe, there are Jewish people who don't believe, that's fine, let's all have some good food,
Right.
Like, what is the state of things from what you've seen?
Okay, so this is a whole different interesting topic. So gatekeeping in the pagan community used to be extremely high, right? Either you were Gardnerian, or you were Alexandrian, or you were some other tradition, whatever the case might be. You had to act a certain way. You had to do a certain thing. You had to, right?
Yeah.
I find that much more these days. I'll give you a prime example of this. In the Gardnerian tradition, you cannot be practicing. So most groups tend to pair off so that you can do rituals and things like that. In the Gardnerian tradition, you cannot pair off with somebody of the same sex.
Oh.
Which
really?
Yeah, they won't let you do it.
Just baked in homophobia?
You can't,
That's weird. I wouldn't have expected that.
And you can't even become higher than second-degree priest if you are gay or lesbian. In other words, you can't hold the title of high priest or high priestess if you are gay or lesbian. Now, that's old-school, traditional Gardnerianism. I don't know how it is today. I haven't really probably touched base with Gardnerianism in the last 5 or 6 years.
Okay.
But that was the case when I was in it. So yeah, there was a lot of gatekeeping. Now I find that paganism is so much more free-spirited and eclectic and open-minded. And I think
interesting
when I have those conversations, that I feel free to allow myself to identify as Atheopagan, people understand what I'm saying. That because number one, I'll typically address it in that I am addressing a part of myself when I am doing these rituals, and most people can accept that. I don't really find that I have a lot of issues in that area. I find the biggest issue, as in any religious context, is the differences between traditions, just like there are differences within denominations, right?
Yeah.
but that's really whether you're Atheopagan or just pagan or Nordic pagan or Celtic pagan or whatever the case might be.
I'm from the outside. Really, I haven't seen too much discourse. The only thing that from the outside I see that makes me really happy is it feels like there's a lot of camaraderie in trying to stamp out white supremacy, which makes me really happy to see. I don't know too much else, from that, and so I'm kind of sitting in ignorance here on it. But if anything, what I have seen has been really, really cool. So I'm glad you are where you are. Yeah, I don't know. Go ahead.
It sounds like again, Chaz, you're very similar to a lot of our callers today, where ultimately it seems like you have separated these unfounded ideas from these practices that bring you comfort and allow you to work through some of these difficult moments or emotions, and I am just so super on board with that. Like I truly believe that is the way to go with so many religious concepts, right? It's not the bad parts of Christianity is not the getting together, eating some crackers and talking to each other. That's not the bad part. That's the beautiful human stuff. The bad part is all the beliefs about you're going to be tortured if you're gay, or you're gonna invite demons into your body if you drink alcohol once or have a lustful thought, that type of shit. And that's where I have the problem. If somebody came up to me and was like, hey man, I'm an Atheo Christian, right? And I was like, oh man, what does that mean? And it's like, well, I get together with some buddies and we do the communion thing like once a month, but we don't think it actually turns into the body or anything, and we don't think we're like praising any real entity. We're just getting together and having community. I'm like, I'm all for it, man. So yeah, that's kind of what it sounds like to me. The boat you're in, Chaz, and I just think that's great, man. Keep doing the stuff that is bringing you comfort and giving you a cool community to hang out with.
Thank you. I also just want to say, number one, that whole transubstantiation thing is just so beyond my limit of understanding, right? I mean, yes, let's all turn into cannibals. Anyway. Yeah, right.
The funny thing there is the story itself, of Jesus, saying, "Take this. It is my body. It is my blood."
Who does that?
Well, here's the thing. If you were to put yourself into it, right? So let's for a moment, treat this as a fiction that we, can. Okay, you have this character of Jesus who knows that he's going to be betrayed by Judas, right? And if I really wanted to fuck with him and get in his head, that would be some weird shit that I would do, like in the context of somebody who's trying to allude to the fact that one of you is going to get me killed, and the same with the washing of the feet, right? Like there are things Jesus did that, like, if you were to see it in its own in-universe kind of context, it's some Liam Neeson, I'm gonna find you type of shit. Like that's not too bad. It's when we externalize it and all of a sudden people find this. Oh yes, no, we must continue doing it because Jesus told us to. That's when it gets real weird, and I'm right there with you. But I don't know if you view it in that other context. It's kind of cool, I guess. It's weird, but maybe it's intentionally weird.
From here on, Eric, I am telling you, for the rest of my life, I will forever now see the Last Supper as Jesus fucking with Judas. That is the best lore ever. Like all of this, like we find some gospel, and it just says like, and then before Jesus brought the disciples together, he pulled Peter and Mark aside and he said, hey guys, watch this. I'm gonna totally mess with Judas. We're all gonna like wash each other's feet and shit. It'll be great.
Okay, but like seriously though, even as a Christian, there's so many passages of Jesus big dicking his way around, the Holy Land. I mean, the guy who's gonna turn the money changers out of the temple, fashion a whip and whip them is absolutely gonna do that. Like, that's.
I will say.
Go ahead, Chaz. Sorry.
I will say this. So I'm a businessman. I work for the state of Arizona.
Okay.
And for me, there is something to be said for servant leadership.
Sure.
Now,
yeah.
I take the religious out of that, but to honor and to respect your fellow man, especially if that fellow man is somebody that you have some authority over, is a concept that I will live and die by. So there are some things that, as a teacher, I think the New Testament really does a good job with, right? With loving your neighbor, all of those things that we hear about. I think that you can read the New Testament and really gain some good little nuggets from there. Is it something to build your life off of? I don't know that it is. Some people do, and more power to them that do that. But as far as the whole washing of feet and being true to your fellow man and all of that, I used to identify myself as what I termed as a red letter Christian. As Jesus spoke it, that I was going to do it. Now I've come way far from that at this point in my life, to where yes, there are some good ideas within the New Testament. I can throw away the Old Testament because, but there are some really great nuggets within the New Testament.
Yeah.
But other than a book that might help me to be a better person, that's all I give it credit for. And I don't see it as divinely inspired or the book of everything, right? So anyway, I just went on a tangent.
No,
anyway,
that's okay. I totally agree with you. And hold on just a second. I lost my audio, so if I'm speaking over you, I apologize. But what I was going to say is, it gets me back to that whole cherry picking piece, because Jesus also said, "I'm here to turn you against your family." He said, "Sell your cloak and buy a sword." He had some pretty radical shit too. So yes and no. I don't know. It's interesting having non-believers talking about what benefits there are to the New Testament. And I really hope that there are believers watching this going like, what the fuck are they doing? Because it's so interesting. But if I could summarize what you said, Chaz, it kind of is wrapped up in the notion of stewardship. And stewardship is something that I took with me in my indoctrination, that in a lot of ways I still hold on to, is to be, responsible for those things that you have power over, and to see yourself as someone who needs to take care of those kinds of things. And that's something I'm definitely behind. But yeah, where are you going with the Atheopagan stuff? There are so many people who had so much stuff in the comments to say. I just want to shout out Rose Red, who was who said, when it comes to rooting out white supremacists in the pagan communities, they said if you come across an organization called AFA, to stay away from them. And does that sound right to you, Chaz?
Yes.
Yeah, I have no idea what that means, but
absolutely.
Is that something you know about, Elliot?
No, I have only heard just the whispers of, hey, there apparently seems to be a lot of white supremacists that are also in the pagan community, and I was like, whoa, what? That feels.
Well, so there were a lot of white supremacists that I interacted with when I was a believer. And like pagan, type runes and all of that as tattoos was common enough that I definitely did make that association early on.
Very interesting.
Yeah, I know, right?
I guess normally when I feel, that's why like I was surprised about the thing about like you can't move up as being like a higher level in paganism unless if you're gay, like, because that just feels so counter to what I normally when I think of pagans, I think of fairly welcoming individuals, but maybe that's just my personal experience and I need to meet some more bad pagans. I don't want to.
It's kind of wonderful, well, the fact that you're exposed to the punk rock, let's stomp out some white supremacists, like that's badass.
Yeah, it's way better.
Let me kind of date myself because I'm talking about 70s, early 80s, when paganism was really coming into its own in this country, right? And so, like I said, a lot of that has changed. It's not. I know that a lot of Gardnerian and Alexandrian traditions have really opened up, but it is not as prevalent as it used to be. Yes, there are still some groups out there that still hold to those ways, and that's fine. I'm not going to tell them how to do. I wouldn't tell anybody how to do what is right for them. But I don't want to take up any more of your time.
We've got like 4 or 5 more callers. Yeah. But Chaz, you are a sweetheart, and Eric, I'm so glad that you're here, and I'm so glad that
thanks.
I just want to say, Eric, thank you for doing what you do. And Elliot, I'm sure you do a fantastic job yourself.
Thanks, man.
I wish you, Eric and V and Elliot, I wish you all the best. And I will keep watching. And again, Eric, I owe you such a great debt of gratitude. And I thank you very much.
Thank you. Take care, brother.
Bye-bye.
I gotta say, those are the types of people and calls I am just on a daily basis thrilled that come through. It can be so overwhelming and so difficult sometimes. Hearing all of the bad stuff that happens. Looking into the world around us and just seeing the shit hit the fan on a regular basis, right?
Yeah.
And then to get that opportunity to speak with somebody who's just like, I have found so much comfort and I have found so much help and this community has meant so much to me is just, it really does. It like you said, it gives you that energy, man. It just recharges you in a way that you just don't get other places. So
entirely agreed. It blows my mind. And I'm really happy to see it. We've got so many more calls than we can take in the time that we have left. But just because it feels on brand, I kind of like, we will do this week. I cannot say that we are going to do this every week, you guys. But it feels like it has been the Atheopagan episode. Yeah. Elliot, I don't know if it's you or if this just happens to be the case, but I kind of want to take Steve. This will be our last Atheopagan caller for the day.
Let's do it.
If you are an Atheopagan in the queue, we will not take other Atheopagans after this. Steve in New York, you are live with Eric and Elliot.
I just think that at this point, you guys should pay me because I'm the one that started all this.
It's your fault?
It's your fault.
Yes, okay. I'm the first one ever call about this. And you remember we had me and V ganged up on you about this.
That sounds about right.
2 seasons ago, whatever it was. But yeah, I started this. This is me. Everybody can thank me for this.
Well, damn it, Steve.
Steve.
Gosh.
What the shit?
Yeah, I have.
Now it's fine.
Soon Atheopagans will outnumber the atheists in your
Look,
my job will be done.
You know what? So there are so many people who just, when you don't have let me I'm tripping over my words, and let me slow down for a second. When you leave a faith tradition, there are so many things that you leave behind, and finding things that you have in common with others and creating community is a really important thing, and where you build that and how you build it is really, really important. And what's interesting is I find that, you know, Atheopagans and atheist witches and you know these communities find their way to this channel, which is really, really cool. But I also just want to shout out that I find board game communities, you know, where people create these kinds of really, really powerful, wonderful relationships with each other and gather together and do fun stuff that brings them joy. Just the board game community has not found this channel, but y'all have. So
to be fair, Eric, to be fair, I have yet to meet a pagan who does not play D&D.
I was gonna say, yeah. There's a huge overlap there. That's for sure. Yeah, that's for sure.
Overlap.
That's fair. I also have not met any poly people who don't play board games.
That's also true. I've also, that's just my experience. Yeah.
Oh my God, is everyone in this call poly?
I am, and I love board games. I am constantly asking my friends to play. I am that dude that's like, we are gonna finish every fucking bit of this game of Risk. Like, I don't care that we have been playing for 4 hours and it is just this one country left. We will finish this game.
Yep.
Elliot, we need to talk.
Yeah. We will.
Let's put a pin in that. But Steve,
sorry, Steve.
Yeah, talk to me. What's going on?
So I actually wanted to talk to you about a couple things. So I've been listening. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to call during your first return, so I wanted to congratulate you on returning. We already talked in Discord about it, but I just wanted to thank you for coming back and putting your work back into this.
Thank you.
Secondly, I want to talk about two things.
Okay.
The first thing was I wanted to call about anti-theism versus pluralism, which was a conversation you had in the last episode, but I don't think we delved as deep as we could have.
Okay.
Because I thought originally, and I think this is a dramatic shift that you've had over the past few years, if I'm not mistaken. You used to be, as far as I'm aware, a pretty hardcore anti-theist, and so was I. But that has gradually shifted to pluralism, of which I think is a more useful and a more pragmatic way of engaging with the world around us. Because when I started my political journey and my religious journey, I started as a Christian communist back in the day. And
yeah, you were light years away from my church, man. You would have gotten burned at the stake.
Yeah. Well, I believe that, I took the quote that a rich man has a lower chance of going to heaven than a camel passing through the eye of a needle.
Yeah.
So I was like, so I was like, the society that Jesus seemed to have wanted was a more equal society where everyone owned everything. I think pluralism very much, I think that if you work from an anti-theist position in your aspects of life and trying to work for the greater good of things, you're going to have to ally with people that may not necessarily agree with you on a metaphysical level, but definitely on a political level. Some of the earliest communists and socialists of the day were hardcore Christians back in the 18 and early 1900s who believed that, we needed to make a more equitable society. And I can't imagine not working with those people to make a more just society just because they are Christian.
Yeah.
That's where I wanted to go with that first conversation. What are your thoughts around that?
Absolutely. Okay, so I draw an interesting line there. I do really quickly want to point out there's a book called The Story of God. I think it's by Chris Matheson. It's been a long time since I read it, but he kind of talks about there being different versions of Jesus, and one of them is barefoot Jesus. And the type of way that you describe Jesus there is definitely barefoot Jesus, not sword mouth Jesus. Like, definitely a book worth checking out. It's a laugh, but really on topic. Yes, and this is going to be really, really not satisfactory, but I do consider myself an anti-theist, just very pragmatically. I like the way I like the way you put that word, because when I was at the ACA, I had the benefit of being surrounded by other atheists, right? Other non-believers. And from there, you kind of get into the weeds on things. When it comes to supporting a religion, I think that there are different levels of conversation. If you're just trying to find community and camaraderie and not having to agree with each other on things, then the benefit of what Elliot's doing with, meeting with believers and just talking to each other. What's the name of the group, by the way? Is there like
the Conversation Coalition? You can find us on Facebook and YouTube and all the stuff. So
I love it. Yeah, the Conversation Coalition I think is incredibly useful. But there is a place for the real deep navel gazing. If somebody wants to get into what they believe and why, and really dive into the why part and talk about their epistemology, I will take a much more hardline view, simply because I think that once we get away from the the really pragmatic, are we not going to kill each other type stuff, it is interesting, and I don't think that there is good reason to support those bigger those theologies. And so I don't know, you're still going to find me taking anti-theist positions, but it's only when I think that the person I'm talking to can handle it,
So my position on that is that I think that there are religions we should be against, and those are specifically religions that have a supremacist linkage to them.
Right.
Unfortunately, a lot of Abrahamic religions have this, where we have the only truth. The truth is only us, and we are the only ones that are able to continue. Thankfully, in the pagan community, if we're going to go along the same route we've been going down, that doesn't seem to exist in the ones that I'm involved with. Of course, you guys did mention the AFA. Before.
I just read it in the comments. I have no idea what it is, and I would love to get context so that if somebody clips
the
out,
the Asatru Folk Assembly. Anytime you see the word folk or Volk in the pagan community, you got to be a little bit leery about.
Yeah.
The AFA was specifically created by a white supremacist who unfortunately shares a name with me. He basically the idea is that only white people have a genetic linkage to the heathen gods. All other people cannot have that because they do not have the white skin and genetics that link you to said gods, and therefore they must be kept out. They, at this point, are creating the last big piece of news that I heard from them was that they were trying to create their own homeschooling program.
Oh my God. I'm so not surprised by that.
And so if you look at I'm not going to tell anyone to go look. I'm just going to tell you how crazy they are. They basically, when I went on that website to check out what they were trying to teach, one of the most horrid things that they were trying to push was this idea that all the female gods of the heathen belief were basically just good old housewives who stayed at home and didn't do anything other than supporting their male counterparts. They also almost fully removed Loki from the entire equation.
Hold on, Loki is a bi icon. You can't get rid of Loki.
Well, that's why they do it, because
no.
One of the things,
who else births a horse?
Sorry. Do, or that they have an issue with, is what is called latent Christianity. They take a lot of like the laws and traditions of what is thought to be, or what is heteronormative, cishet, patriarchal system, and imbue it into the pagan belief system. So Loki is removed if he's not basically just turned into the devil of the religion itself. Even Freya, who was known to be quite promiscuous, and was not ashamed to use her body as she wished
Yeah.
to get what she wanted, is completely removed from those stories.
Okay.
Wow.
So yeah.
Steve, do me a favor. You come across any of
Yep.
them, tell them to call the show.
Yeah.
I doubt I will. I do not get into communities that have these type of people in them. Right now,
go ahead.
In the more progressive spaces, the big fight is about allowing gods to be worshipped that aren't approved by a lot of people. So, for example, I tried to join an organization in my area to become a certified priest of heathenry.
Okay.
And I was told because I venerate a certain group of gods, I am not allowed to do so. Loki had been going through that up until about a year or two ago. They were not allowing any Loki veneration whatsoever at their communities, and that caused a huge fight that just ended like a year or two ago, where they finally bent over and went, okay, maybe we should allow this because it's causing a lot more trouble than it's worth. But yeah, I was barred completely from that organization because of who I venerate.
Interesting.
From the outside, it is so interesting seeing that kind of stuff, because like I don't have a dog in the race remotely, and watching people exclude each other is so I appreciate the context, because without it I have absolutely no idea. But I do think this episode is probably going to get passed around Atheopagans, so I would love to put out the bat signal. It would be an interesting call if some of those bigots called the show, because I would love to figure out how they justify that in that faith tradition, because my God, that's fucking weird.
Yeah. But bigotry is this weird twisting of reason and logic to just get to hate. And it shows all the time when somebody says, oh, you can't actually be connected to these gods because your skin is too dark. It's like, wow, man, that's fucking
exactly
crazy.
What they say.
Yeah, that's just crazy.
I mean, is it that hard though? Like, I've had people.
Oh no, Hinduism has that stuff. Hinduism has a colorism thing. They specifically say in some ancient texts that the whiter you are, the closer you are to Brahma. So like,
I've seen that shit in atheist spaces. When it comes to like the bell curve and IQ shit. That's fucking weird. But
or
racism is
Mormonism say that they didn't allow like black people were some cursed tribe or something.
They're black because they were cursed. Yes.
Cursed with a skin of blackness. There are actually stories that they would tell each other of because there are a lot of Pacific Islanders who are Mormon. They really, really hit the Pacific Islands hard, and there are stories of people preaching to a congregation of Pacific Islanders and them saying that, you could see over the course of the sermon their skin getting whiter.
Oh my God. Holy crap.
Yep.
Oh,
it's so
gross.
cringy. It's so cringy.
I know. I feel like I need to shower. It's just
but I don't know if we're on topic or far afield.
If I could, Steve, real quick, if I could go back to the anti-theism real quick. So I think for me, whenever I talk about anti-theism, I always have to take a step back and give my definition of religion first, because I do take such a strict stance of religion. I hold two different viewpoints. I hold one that is the most strict viewpoint, and then I hold one that is a bit more inclusive in terms of engaging in society. So for instance, a religion in the strictest of standpoints that I use is a doctrine of some kind, like an actual codified doctrine. It must have that. It must have a belief in the supernatural, a deity of some kind, something in that vein, and it must have traditions and practices. So that definition, for instance, would exclude things like secular humanism or the Satanic Temple, because they don't actually believe in the supernatural stuff, right? And they don't even necessarily have a set of rituals, right? Especially like secular humanists, right? TST more so. But then there's the legal definition that does include the Satanic Temple and secular humanism and atheism as well, honestly, because a non-religion or a lack of religion is something that still needs to be, you know, cared for in a government and a society and so forth. We still need to make sure that people aren't being discriminated against because of their lack of this understanding. So whenever I use anti-theist and I'm saying I'm just against the religion stuff, what I'm really against is that codified doctrine and the belief in the supernatural stuff, right? The rituals aren't really the issue for me. It's the deity stuff. And really, I don't like the word anti-theist. I prefer the term anti-theism because I'm not against Christians. I'm against Christianity, right? I may be against the behaviors of certain Christians, but again, the people aren't my focus. It's really not Muslims I have a problem with. It's Allah. It's the understanding in the Quran of how to behave your life that I say, that's atrocious. But again, most religious people are better than their religion. And that's why I try to separate those two things. So again, in that hardcore definition of religion, yeah, I'm so far totally anti-theism, totally against it, 100%. In that more loose definition for legal purposes and so forth, no, obviously I'm not against all of those things because I do like the Satanic Temple and secular humanism and stuff. So does that distinction make sense to you, Steve? Like, do you see how I'm separating that stuff?
I guess my main question with that would be engaging with, would you believe that Atheopaganism is a religion?
I'm not positive, and I would say I think one of the reasons I'm not positive is due to my own ignorance on Atheopaganism, and I would just need to look a little bit further into it to understand. I don't think everybody that has taken the label Atheopagan or all of the people involved in that community do have beliefs in the supernatural, but I think some do. So it just kind of depends. It just kind of depends. If it has that codified doctrine, belief in the supernatural, and rituals, then I would say, yeah, it's that hardcore version of religion, and I would be against it, mainly because of the belief in the supernatural. That's really where I have the problem, because I focus so much on epistemology, because I care so much about how do we know what we know, and is it true? And if we don't have that, then I'm always going to be at least kind of against some ideology, right? If your ideology has something like that in it, I'm always going to be pushing back on it. So what I would say is that most, I'm not going to say all, but most Atheopagans believe in some sort of Jungian idea of like the gods having a sorry, my dog's barking for some reason. So I lost my train of thought. But the Jungian tropes of like, you know, the warrior, the wizard, the leader, but not actual entities that exist and engage in the world around them. Just concepts that are standardized characteristics of various, you know, attributes of people or whatever.
Right. Plus the idea as well is that rituals, even if they don't have a supernatural effect, they might have a material effect on the body and the mind when you engage with the community and the ritual itself. So I guess
I'd say that sounds to me like it would be in that category of that softer religion, that for me at least, because again, it doesn't have the supernatural element to it and doesn't even necessarily have this codified doctrine or set of rituals. So that would be in that vein of things where I'd be like, yeah, it legally is a religion. It doesn't meet my hard criteria, and it wouldn't be one of the things that I would be like, I'm against this, you know?
Right. I guess my main point is that I think that if we there are plenty of religions that we can like theorize about that wouldn't have any of the issues that you and I would have with religion. Whether they are religion that only works with material things that exist in the universe as we can perceive them, or maybe assigning some, levels of importance to those things to the point of actually, like saying somebody who believes in the Big Bang and everything that is actually scientifically proven, but worships the idea of, the mysteries of the universe and the beauty of the universe. This is not a religion that I would be in any way against whatsoever. And I don't think would have a real issue engaging with society as it is today. I think that the only religions that we have to be anti are this, again, as I said before, the supremacist religions, the ones that, are saying that all of the rest of you are wrong and any other thought besides ours cannot be tolerated. I don't think that religions without that, I don't think we should be really working against in any material way.
So yes, I know I'm repeating myself here, but it totally depends on what your goal is, right? Like I think that when you're saying that in the context of a secular humanist wanting to build a better world, right? And us collaborating, and that's fantastic, but that's not always the point of my conversations. Sometimes it's about epistemology and just, do you have good reasons for coming to the conclusions that you came to? And for that, I am a lot more bullish.
Yeah.
And
I think
that
no, please.
But that's but that's,
sorry, I'll mute myself. Go ahead.
No worries. But that's simply in the context of two people who are, agreeing to engage in that conversation on that level. Because if I were to meet somebody who is at that place with me and we wanted to hash it out about whether or not they're justified in their whatever weird beliefs that they have, then I'm going to dive into epistemology. But I guess that's why I would still consider myself an anti-theist, because it does still matter to me that you have good reason for believing the things that you believe. That's just after we stop killing each other. So,
and I think that focus on epistemology, that justifying, the conclusions that you've come to, that is so deeply important for me. And if somebody really put my feet to the fire, gun to the head type thing, and said, "Hey, SR, which one are you more focused on? Getting rid of religion or making sure people have good justification for their beliefs?" I'd be like, "Oh, the second one, the justification one," because I think, and this is totally a belief of mine, y'all, I really do think proper methodology for coming to true, accurate conclusions will lead to people not being religious, because they'll recognize that they don't have good justification for those conclusions. So really, the anti-theism stuff for me is kind of just a byproduct of the thing that I'm really focused on, which is just making sure we're all like good when it comes to evaluating stuff, just critical thinking and skepticism in general, So
maybe we're redefining pluralism though, because
maybe.
Yeah, because I don't know. I appreciate it, and Steve, I appreciate that you're glad to see the shift in approach, but it's not over. It's never over. The conversations are too good to not have.
So I guess my last point would be this.
Yeah.
So let's say hypothetically that we are able to stop any theological idea of the supremacy arguments.
People saying Volt, and we're not leading holy wars or anything like that. No.
Right, exactly.
Okay, cool.
We got rid of it. We're at that point in our existence. Would you still consider yourself an anti-theist?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay.
And really, that's where my only on an epistemic level. I don't think you're a bad person because you have a different epistemic tool set from me. I do think that it would be relegated to the same thing as like me liking woodworking, me getting into blacksmithing, or any other hobby. That's just because, having those epistemic conversations, it's just my jams. It's just what I enjoy doing. But it wouldn't mean something more intense than that.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. And I'd probably say I'm in the same boat because, again, yes, we have cut down so much of the tangible harm that these religions cause. Abso-freaking-lutely. But I will always stand on the point that poor epistemology, a bad system to get to conclusions, will always lead to harm. Because we have a less good chance of knowing what is and is not true about the world around us. And the more that we know about the world around us, the better conclusions we can make. So if we have a system that ultimately has flaws in the reasoning to get to certain conclusions, that will always be a harmful thing. And it will always be something that I fight against. So again, yeah, I agree. I wouldn't come out and say, oh, you're a jackass, you're a piece of shit for believing this Christian God or anything, No, absolutely not. I'd stand shoulder to shoulder with that person as we champion the rights of the LGBT community, as we champion the rights of free education for people, public housing, access to all these things. Abso-fucking-lutely, we will stand shoulder to shoulder fighting those fights. But when they say, hey, this is correct, I will absolutely say, nuh-uh, man, you got flaws in your methodology, and we'll push back against that. But we'll still go have a burger later, we can still be friends.
I mean, those conversations are best had over a beer anyway.
Absolutely. True. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And when you come up to New York, Eric, we definitely got to get a beer.
Steve, that sounds...
Actually, I drink a lot of whiskey. You can have the beer.
V will join you on the whiskey. V will absolutely join you on the whiskey. I've never been to New York, and so that would be a blast. And you better believe that when we do go, I will announce it. So that sounds like a good time. Steve, is there anything else you wanted to add before we go?
You didn't flirt with me this time, so that's kind of sad.
You do have a sexy voice, Steve. If that helps you.
Yeah, Thank you. Now I'm blushing. Now I feel like this call is complete. I'm good now. All right. At least I got a little bit.
All right. Take care, buddy. Thank you for calling, Steve.
All right. Bye-bye. Talk to you later.
Men don't tell other men enough that they are attractive or charismatic or anything. We need to push back on that, guys.
That's true.
All of those out there, all of the men out there, go tell one of your close male friends they are good looking or they are a sweet guy or something. We don't get enough of that, and we need it.
Damn straight. Yay.
True.
I don't know. I'm not particularly flirtatious today, I don't think. But,
that's okay, man. I mean, some days you're horny, some days you're not horny.
Days,
you know how it is, man.
Steve, I appreciate you, and I'm very glad that you called in. I do want to apologize. There is another Steve, actually, and a Michael and an Evan and a few other that we just did not have time to get to today. So for all of you who called in, thank you so much. I know a lot of you waited on the line for a while, but we just ran out of time today. So please call back. I would love to have those conversations. There were a few callers who wanted to talk about how reading fiction kind of helped get them out of hardcore religion. Somebody in particular wanted to talk about Terry Pratchett, which I absolutely love. So that means SR, before we have you on again, you got to check out Terry Pratchett.
Yeah, okay? I do. I got homework.
I'm assuming you want to come on again at some point.
Oh my gosh, yes. Yeah, please, dude.
Good.
Yeah, let's do it.
Good. Before we go, though, I do want to read out super chats because it's sincerely appreciated. Sean Isherwood, thank you. Sean actually sent twice. First time says, hating algebras are to institutionalism, I think, what Boolean algebra are to classical logic. The law of excluded middle doesn't hold in most... Intuitionism, sorry. I totally mispronounced that, but I think upon reading it, I will get it later. I think it's they're specifically talking about when we were talking about justified true belief.
Yeah.
I misspelled intuitionism twice. Oh, got it. Terrible Liar says, Eric and SR, two of the sweetest guys out on the internet. This episode may need a warning for diabetics. Best of good fortune for both of you. Thank you, Terrible Liar.
Thank you.
Terrible liar. Amit Matthew, thank you, says, does anybody have a good, clear definition of paganism? Oh, damn it. Why didn't I read that when we had Steven on? If religions like Greek or Norse are considered pagan, would certain sects of Hinduism not fall into that category? I would love to have somebody who is part of that community respond to it, but my understanding of it is that pagan was an epithet that was used towards a very specific group of people by colonizing forces, and because of that, I don't know how useful the term is in that respect outside of its context, but that doesn't mean that it hasn't become something new that people have built for themselves. And I'd love to see that actually in the comments for the video. I want to do an after show. Elliot, do you want to join me in the Discord for the after show?
Heck yeah, dude. Let's do it.
Nice. For those of you who want to join in, the link is in the description for the video, and I know that they're popping the link in tiny.cc/SG Discord. Join us for the after show where we can just talk to each other and hang out for a little while. I think that'd be a lot of fun. Elliot, where can people find you?
Yeah. If you go on the Twitters or the Facebook, just Secular Rarity, you can find me. I do kind of have a YouTube channel where if you go look up Secular Rarity, all you'll see is just a playlist of all the wonderful places that I hang out. So I'm over on Atheist Experience. I'm over on Atheist Republic. I hang out at Skeptic Haven and just literally a bunch of other shows. I am here pretty much every week helping behind the scenes, and I'm always having a good time here. But yeah, if you just go type in Secular Rarity somewhere, you'll probably find me. I did see, though, real quick, I can't let this go, and I know some folks who have seen me other places would be very disappointed if I let this go. Jamie Gallier, I think is how you say the last name.
Yeah.
Sent $4.99 and said, "Love seeing Secular Rarity. Always a sweet treat. Dance monkey." And you know what? Because you sent $5, Jamie. Woo! Yeah, I was on Skeptic Generation. Oh my gosh. That should probably keep you guys happy for a week or two. So
that was adorable, and I loved that. I don't understand it, but thank you. All right. I didn't plug the Patreon. If you like the show and you want to consider supporting us, I put out ad-free versions of things. With all of the hectic stuff going on in my life, I'm a little behind on it. But I do ultimately put out ad-free versions of the podcast, of this video, thank people. Once I roll the credits, you'll see the names of people on Patreon who are supporting the show. If you would like to see your name in the credits, that is a Patreon level, but go to patreon.com/skepticgeneration or tiny.cc/donate to SG. I believe that link still works. I hope it still works. If not, let me know.
Do it right now. Check it right now for us and tell us in the after show.
All right. Sounds good. Well, Elliot, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank
you. This was truly wonderful.
Yeah, it was. Until next time, I'm Eric Murphy, and I'm glad we had this talk.